Hi everyone, my name is Chris Hong and I'm an artist, and welcome back to my channel for another video. If you have seen my last video, I was saying that I was going to be doing a gouache illustration for this week's video, but I had a pretty busy week this week, so I wasn't able to get that done for the time this video is supposed to be out. So I decided to go ahead and make a video of this portrait study that I did in gouache that went horribly wrong, I would say. It was really bad from the beginning to almost the end, and then there was a point where I just gave up on it, and then I shut off the camera and I thought I was done with it. But I can be a little obsessive about letting pieces go, and it's kind of hard to get it out of my mind or out of my system, so I ended up coming back to it, and then I fixed some of the areas that were bothering me, and I got it to a point where I was happy enough with it so that I could at least post it on Instagram and not feel like that whole morning was wasted, because I filmed the whole process, and even watching the video, I feel like there's almost no point in the process where this thing actually looks good. It was a bad painting from the get-go, and there are many reasons for why that is, and at the end of the video I'll circle back to why I think this painting went wrong. But when I posted the study on Instagram, it actually got a really positive reaction for the most part, and it got quite a bit of likes. And for me, I would say if I get over 8,000 likes on my post, which I have about 80 something thousand followers, so that's about 10%. And I think these days, if you get over 10% of engagement, the 10% of your followers, I think that's actually considered a success. So this post, when I initially posted it, it was getting a lot of likes and it was getting a lot of engagement right from the get-go, so I was pleasantly surprised because I wasn't very confident about posting it in the first place. But I did feel like I liked it enough and there are enough redeeming qualities in it that I thought it warranted a post. It would be a waste to just toss it aside. So when I posted this study, I wrote in the captions that it went horribly wrong, but I was able to kind of make it more presentable in the end. And I got reactions from some people saying, "Oh, you think this is horrible?" And I think those people maybe didn't quite finish reading the entire caption, because I said that it was horrible, but I got it to a point where it's not so horrible and I think I can post it, and I actually think there are some redeeming qualities about it. And some people were saying, "Oh, it's really refreshing to hear an artist like you have these struggles that they struggle with too, and that not every work that we do we like, and that's refreshing for them to see." And that's the response that I would expect from the kind of comment that I made on the piece. But there's this one comment that I got that threw me off, and I didn't know how to quite react to it at first. And unfortunately, this comment has since been deleted, and not by me, but I guess by the commenter. And so I can't quote it word for word, but the gist of it was something like this: "I wish you wouldn't be so hard on yourself, because it makes me wonder what you would think about my art." And this comment really threw me off. I didn't know how to quite respond to it. I think it's supposed to be a compliment veiled under self-deprecation. I have to admit, when I first read this, I got defensive, like, "Oh, well, why shouldn't I be able to talk freely about my work? If you feel bad about your work, then that's not my problem." But I genuinely think that this person was giving me a compliment and not accusing me of indirectly putting them down. I've seen comments like this on other people's YouTube videos and other people's work, and I didn't think too much of it until I got it myself. I had to ask myself, am I being too critical of my work, and what kind of impact does this have on other people? I like to see it as being as objective as I can with my own work, and I see that as a healthy thing. And also, it tells a story, you know, it's not a linear progression from the beginning of the painting to the end of the painting. It's very, very up and down, and I like to share that story with everyone. I do want people to know when I've struggled, if I've struggled. I don't know why. Maybe that can come off to some people as complaining or maybe even fishing for compliments. I do not see it that way personally, and that's definitely not the reaction that I'm looking for when I do share the struggles that I had with a certain piece. I guess what I want is for other artists to feel like, yes, I've been there too, I've struggled as well, and I go through those same struggles too. And that makes me feel connected to them, and I think it makes them feel connected to me. I mean, maybe my delivery was a little harsh in saying that it was horrible until the very end. And the key word there was until. So I don't think it's horrible anymore. I did say that I think it's somewhat presentable, and I guess that was a little self-deprecating, because if I'm able to make a post of it on Instagram, it means that I don't think it's quite that shitty. It means that I think it's good enough that I think some population of my followers will enjoy. And if you find yourself liking something that I post, that I say something negative about, I think that's okay. You don't have to feel bad about it, because I probably secretly feel like it's good too, and I'm just kind of afraid to admit to it because I think people might point out the flaws, and I feel like I have to point it out first because I don't want to give them the satisfaction of pointing it out for me. The fragile ego of an artist. Now that is a topic for many future videos to come. If I ended up saying something negative about something you thought looked good in your eyes, that shouldn't mean that it's a reflection on you or your tastes. For one, I don't tell people how to feel about my work. I give them context as to how the piece came about, but ultimately it's up to you as the viewer to decide how you feel about the work. And two, at least for me, when I am really hard on myself on a certain piece, some of that may be me trying to protect my fragile ego, because I prefer to point out the flaws first before they get pointed out to me by other people. I want other people to know that, yes, I do know these flaws exist, and because of that, maybe I do come off a little more negative than is necessary. I hope you guys know that I am not offended at all by that comment, and I wish I had responded to it sooner, but at the same time, I still really don't know how I would respond to it. And I'd love to know how you guys would interpret that comment on your work, and how you would respond to it when someone says you shouldn't be too hard on yourself, because essentially it makes me feel bad about my own work. Would you guys see it more as a compliment and they are just kind of putting themselves down? And some people think of putting themselves down as elevating people above them, and some people see that as a way of complimenting them. Or do you think this comment was not appropriate? Is it just them projecting their own insecurities onto other people? I would love to know your thoughts. And now I'll quickly circle back to why I think this painting started off on a really bad note from the beginning. Number one reason was that I really rushed it. I was not very focused that morning, and I was just trying to film some painting process for a future video and maybe even get a post out of it on Instagram. And I guess my heart wasn't in it. I was just doing it for the sake of doing it and not at all thinking when I was putting down my strokes. I was really rushing it. And number two, I had a tough time trying to maintain the structure of the face, because I think I didn't let some parts dry enough before applying more paint on top. And what that did was not clearly defining the edges where there is a plane change, because the paint would just blend together because I didn't wait for them to dry enough, and it would have a muddy effect. And not just color-wise, but structurally it would be muddy. And number three, my colors were also a bit muddy because my palette, my gouache palette, is very, very dirty. And this is a dirty little secret of mine, but I almost never clean out my palette. And when I am feeling lazy with the painting, I tend to not mix my colors very well. So the combination of using a dirty palette and being lazy with mixing my colors created an environment for muddy colors to occur on the painting. For example, this painting is predominantly on the warm side, I would say, from the reds, the oranges, and yellows. And when I wanted a cooler color to indicate plane changes and planes that are facing away from us, I was being lazy and I would just grab the color pretty much straight from the tube, which was the color I was using for the shadows in this piece was Cerulean blue. And because this is a predominantly warm painting, taking a color basically opposite from the color wheel will end up making the colors very garish. This is a pretty bad habit that I have because I tend to not clean out my palettes ever. So I'm always using a dirty palette. And it is harder to get the color that you are wanting because you have a lot of colors already on your palette and they get mixed together, and yeah. And lastly, I just didn't put enough care and attention into the features of the face. I would say the focus of this painting is her eyes and that intense gaze and that strong shadow shape that is being made by her brow bone that is facing downward. And at the end, I didn't like the results because I had totally neglected what I thought was cool about the portrait to begin with. So basically, I know exactly why this painting went awry from the get-go. And that is why I was pretty hard on myself, but I did that knowing that I could have done better. So when I was being hard on myself and pointing that out, I don't necessarily see it as me putting myself down, but rather me calling myself out for having been lazy and not working to my full potential. Anyways, I think I have said enough on the topic for now. I hope you guys were able to get something out of this video, and I will see you guys in the next one, and hopefully it will be my gouache illustration that I said I was gonna do in my last video. See you next week. Bye!